movement is called Boston While Black, or BWB. It's a membership community for Black students and professionals who are seeking connection in the community and in the city.
Both people from here who want to better navigate Boston professionally, and then people that move here that want to figure out how to build community here.
This outdoor event took place on the lawn on D in South Boston.
So here we are in the Seaport, aka South Boston, a space where historically Black people haven't always felt welcome or seen themselves. And so we're introducing people really to this part of the city as somewhere where they're safe, can have fun.
Hello, I'm Sheena Collier, founder and CEO of Boston While Black. We are a digital and in-person membership community for Blacks, professional students and entrepreneurs across the region who are seeking connection and community.
I just love a good pitch. It's like my favorite thing. I mean, as a media person, as a marketing person, when someone can just go right into it, it's like, this is what I do, plain and simple. I go and clear. So, yeah.
It's not easy though, because there's so much you can say.
Well, the thing is, get to the point. That's my biggest thing is just get to the point, because if I have to pull it out of you, then it's not fun for me. It's not fun for the person that's trying to engage with you. So when you get it right, people feel it.
Yeah, agreed.
So, I get people get mad at me when I don't sit there and announce the show. So this is Minding Your Business with Jody Tatiana. One of the things that I focus so much on the people that I'm talking to that I just forget about me. And I mean, if people want to know who I am and who the show is, they can figure it out, because I'm that kind of person. But I seek out people that are interesting, fun, engaging, but in the small business community, entrepreneurial community, just innovators that people are just making changes. And Sheena and I have known each other for a very, very long time. I'm not going to mention how we know each other because I'm not going to, but
no free promotion.
Exactly. So I have been in awe of her from afar, we used to we know each other because we worked in a place together and we were in the same cube, and just watching you, just watching you, I was always in awe. And I'm one of those people where I'm loud, obnoxious, I talk a lot, I move fast, but people don't understand that I see things that most people don't pay attention to. And I watch, I love watching certain people. Certain people are just window dressing, but certain people are they're making changes and they're doing it in such a succinct way. And I'm always happy about this. So I stalk you, but I don't stalk you by going on your website. I just stalk you in regards of, I can see that you continue to grow. So I'm just gonna just blowing smoke up your tush. That how much
I'm receiving all of it.
No, I love that. And there's only certain people in town that I care to say that to, because, and they know who they are. I've had them on the podcast, or I just know them. I love saying it, where I love that you shine. Plain and simple, yeah. I love how you shine. So I'm happy, and I'm super happy that I was patient enough to wait for you, because I want people to understand who you are, where you came from, what are you doing, why you're doing it, and where does it go from here. And we have plenty of time to talk, so do not be afraid to sit there and be long-winded with your answers, because I want people to understand really, really who you are. So let's start at the very beginning. Sheena, where do you come from, and who are you from the time that you were, I don't want to say born, but yeah, from the time that you're growing up all the way till college?
Mm-hmm. I'm originally from Albany, New York. And I would say from a young age, I actually have been an educator. I had the fortune of loving school. I really believe that your early experiences kind of shape your future kind of relationship to school and learning, and probably even the work world. And so I was fortunate to have in first grade, my Mrs. Hill, my favorite teacher. So I had a Black woman first grade teacher and a Black woman principal of my elementary school, who just really nurtured me and saw very early on, because of what my parents had done preschool. They taught me how to read at 3 or 4 years old, and just really poured into me. And so I came into school really ready. I actually, instead of a book bag, I wore a purse to first grade. And I took school very seriously. I would wear skirts, and I was kind of modeling myself after my mother, who my mother always was dressed to the nines, regardless of where she was going. And so that's how I came to first grade as well. And so I was just really ready and excited to learn. And Mrs. Hill ended up skipping me. So I went from first to third grade. And so I've always been, younger than the other folks around me. But that really shaped my early relationship to school, my work ethic, and just, I think, made me into a lifelong learner, because I actually really enjoy, even till today, I literally read every billboard. Like, I'm just constantly soaking in information and learning about the things going on around me, which, later, particularly in relation to Baltimore Black and other things I've done, made me a resource for other people, because I take in a lot of information and typically have a lot to share. My parents were from the South, and they, met in Albany. But on my mother's side is coming from, my grandfather was an AME preacher. And so my mother had moved around a lot, this kind of Southeast and East Coast, as he preached at different churches. She was the oldest of her mother and father's kids together. And so she, like, stories you hear about preachers' kids, she kind of rebelled. So she didn't want to stay close to home. So she ended up in New York. They were from Georgia, and ended up living in Philadelphia. And then on my father's side, and my mother's born in Memphis. My father was born in Knoxville, Tennessee. And I have 7 older siblings. So I was born pretty late in my parents' lives. They were already in their 40s. My mother was in her late 30s. My father's in his 40s. And so I am 12 years younger than my closest in age sibling. So I was a lot younger. And so my mother, I was, as my mother says, you weren't a mistake, but you weren't planned. So I just came at a time when they were, a little more settled and, had a different experience than my siblings. But they really poured into me, particularly my father was just a huge public education proponent. But they had both, my mother had been at Selma. My father was at the March on Washington. Like, there just was a lot of history and, things you don't really notice until you're older. Really think about fully where you came from, that a lot of the organizing that I later did in life and just who I became really was a part of what I was seeing and kind of soaking in, particularly from my father, who organized with A. Philip Randolph. And he was the president of the Community Development Corporation in our neighborhood, and always civically engaged on the PTA, Parent Teacher Association. And, as a kid, it just was like annoying. Like, he's just always somewhere and doing something. And, he was bringing me to meetings. He was the head of the union. They had kind of like a Black union for state workers. So I just grew up going to community meetings. My mother was getting her college degree while I was growing up. So I was in class with her. She actually told me a story recently where she had to remind me that I was not the one in college, she was, because I would try to answer questions when I was 4 or 5 years old in class with her. So I just grew up in this environment of learning and organizing and community. And it just clearly is who I am, and just a big part, and has followed me throughout my career.
Question in regards to, so that gap between your sibling, the next, the number 6. So you're number 7, number 6, 12 years. What was the relationship with your siblings, and did they have the same experience as you? Because your parents were later on, they're later under their years. They're adding more to their life. They're doing more in their communities. I mean, it's that age range where you're like definitely doing a lot of things in your community, because your kids are usually out of the house by then, and you want to have that second life. So now you're here, but then your siblings are involved. I mean, like they're around as well. So how was that? How was the relationship with you with them, and how were they being raised by your parents?
Yeah, and I'm actually number 8.
You're number 8. Okay.
I'm the only child of my parents together. So my father had been married and had 5 kids, and my mother had been married and had 2.
Okay.
I kind of grew up like an only child in a sense, because with the youngest being, the next youngest being 12 when I was born, everyone else was teenagers and almost like in young adulthood when I was born. And so I've only lived in the house with 2 of my siblings, my mother's son and daughter. If you ask my mother's other daughter, who's 15 years older than me, this question, she would say that, there was a little bit of unfairness, that I got a 13-inch color TV when I got straight A's. I got new sneakers all the time for the first day of school. I just not only were they older, they were more they had more stability. My mother was a homeowner by the time I was born, just like when my siblings, they lived in housing development. So it just was a totally different experience. And I think it took really from until I got to be maybe late teens, early 20s, I think, for my sibling to really relate to me as their sibling. I almost was like another child for them. Like my sisters had to braid my hair, they had to babysit me. I'm closer with my mother's kids. So my sister, she was kind of like my second mother.
Yeah.
She was 15 when I was born. And so even in high school, when I was having that rebellious stage and didn't want to listen to my mother, I went and lived with my sister, because I was 16, so she was already 30, 31 by then. So it was an interesting where I feel like I have a lot of girlfriends who probably are more like my sisters in the sense that we grew up together, whereas my actual siblings felt like pseudo parents or even like cousins. Just was an interesting. So yeah, they had a very different experience than me, and are super, super proud of me and all very supportive, but it definitely took, I think they had some stuff to deal with around, seeing me have such a different experience.
What about the education proponent? Because you are well read, you're well spoken, and again, this is me. People are going to learn about this, but you are a great package. You're like a great package of when you're saying that you are a sponge. Like the word I'm using is sponge because you are. You see things. I'm the same way. Being a marketing person, good marketing, bad marketing, I love it. I sit there and like read everything. I will go down the rabbit hole of learning something. If I see something new, it is over for my day because I'm learning every aspect of it. When the queen died, everyone's like, you are obsessed. I go, I'm not obsessed with the queen per se, but I love the history and how it weaves together. I need to understand everything about this one thing. So what were they getting the same kind of education, and are they the same exact way? And because of that, they were your second parents. Did they give you that same the same leeway of mom and dad want me to learn, they want me to sit there and absorb as much, but am I getting the same support from my siblings because they have it in them as well?
I would say yes, as far as the education piece, particularly the girls. So I have 4 sisters and 3 brothers, and all of my sisters are well educated, dual degrees. Not the same is true for my brothers. Yeah, like it's you could see the difference in the girls, and I have all kind of theories about girls and women and just how dope we are. So, I think they were getting the same messages around education, but there was, oh man, I thought about this as you were asking me the question. Something else, and I don't really know where this comes from. For whatever reason, they mostly are like tech, science, finance. My father even commented to me one day. My father passed away in 2018, and when him and I were having a conversation while he's in the hospital, and he was like, "You're so different. Like I'm very like an empath, and always, not to say they aren't caretakers, and because they are, but just the way that who I am has driven what I do for a living, and just my insight into people, whereas they're more like hard numbers people. My sister, my mother's daughter, she could like build a computer, and I don't have any of those type of skills. I went to school for psychology. I've always been about kind of the mind and how people socialize and build, and there's a huge difference. You can, if you were observing, you could see the difference between me and my siblings in that way, and just even what we've pursued. And I think that, but the education piece, particularly for my father, he was, interestingly enough, I didn't find out until he died, because I was in charge of everything, that he didn't have his college degree. I always thought he did, because he was so on us about it. But what it was is he went to college, he met his first wife in college, but he almost was like so smart that he
wanted
couldn't
more.
And he couldn't focus on, like, he kept changing majors. I worked in education for a decade, and so I understand how there are things that sometimes show up in people that have certain level of intelligence or genius that looks like behavioral issues, but it's because they're bored. And so, I don't know who later told me this, because I don't think he told me, but he bopped around to different majors and he never actually finished. But my father he's like one of the smartest people I know. And I just always assumed, and he allowed me to assume that he had graduated from college. And so it wasn't until I was like going through paperwork that I realized that he hadn't. And so he just was like a self-taught, in a lot of similar ways, just soaked in a lot of information. And he was albino and born in the 30s in the South. And so he
Challenging life, I'm assuming.
Like, no one's really clear what this means. And, is he Black? Is he white? Not feeling accepted. So because of that, and him and I later talked about this, he felt like he had to excel at everything. He was a Sigma. He was very charming ladies man. He was, he had all these almost like overcompensating. And
But the thing is, like, that happens all the time though, because so I'm dyslexic, and when I was younger, no one knew. You name a learning disability, and most entrepreneurs have something. No one knows what it is, and they do assume that you're a troublemaker in class because you talk too much, you do too much, because you're just trying to find your way. And so it is one of those moments where you have no choice but to excel, because you're playing the game against yourself.
Yep. Yeah. And it makes me sensitive and compassionate, and I can see people in a different way. I think it comes from family life and also from working in education and working with kids, where I don't automatically see something and be like, oh, that's a bad person, or that's a bad, I do think about, like, what is this person trying to like overcompensate for?
Yep.
Because that it's just so clear to me when I see someone acting a certain way, even in adults. And so that, there's a level of, I think, like all folks, or many people, I won't say all, there's a level of craziness in my childhood as well. And so all of that together just made me, one, very compassionate towards people, and just make a lot of room for people and understand that the experiences that people are coming from show up in different ways. And I just really, really, way before I even had any thoughts of being an entrepreneur, because I actually was kind of anti-entrepreneur for a lot of my life. My family was so like, you go to high school, you go to college, you go to grad school.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that entrepreneurial people were like I had a boyfriend who actually was, I recognize now, was entrepreneurial, but I thought he was like unstable. I'm like, why does he always have a different idea, and he wants to do this and he wants to do that? And it made me like uncomfortable. He was my high school sweetheart, and then we got back together as adults, and I just was like, what do you want to do? Because for me, I've known since first grade what I wanted to do. So I'm just like, how do you not know what you want to do? But what I realize now, I was, they have this term now, entrepreneurial. I always, probably, with the exception of one job, I've always taken jobs where I was the first person in a role. I always like to shape the role. I'd like to build the program, build the initiative, because I was always an entrepreneur, and I just didn't see it like that. The financial stability piece, I think, is what had me concerned about doing something on my own. But I think that there's just how these experiences have shaped people, and particularly have shaped me and put me on a path where it wasn't until all that I just told you about my family, particularly my father being an organizer, it seems obvious now, but I didn't realize it until a couple of years ago, that like, oh, I'm actually like my father.
Not only are you like your father, but you have been doing it all along. You have been a lot of him, but you're a lot of your mom as well. So you're a perfect combination of both of them. The learning, the understanding. I want to sit and really like absorb everything about it, and then just like, okay, I need to own this, and I need to make it grow on my own terms. I can build a team, but I want to lead. I want to be the leader there. So with the education, with the constant way of wanting to build things, you're an empath. I go, how do you balance that? Because For years, so the entrepreneur I've always known, because I was that, I mean, way back when I started my career in 1995. So that I've always known. But the empath was something that's a new term for me because my best friend is one. And then, of course, you start seeing it more and more that people are talking about it. So how are you balancing these three entities of educator, absorbing as much as you possibly can, being the leader, want to sit there and like mold something, but then you're like taking on everyone's emotions.
Yeah.
How are you even able to breathe?
Jody, know how long it took us to schedule this podcast? That's part of the reason why. Because it's always, those three, and that's a good way to kind of summarize it. Those three sides of me have always been there. However, particularly being a full-time entrepreneur now, having to build my own team, and not just being an entrepreneur, but being like a brand.
Yep.
I am struggling, honestly, on the soaking in everyone's energy. Like there's lots of expectations of me as a boss, as a brand or face, you know, as a friend or family member, that I am constantly, because of the nature of my company, I'm around people a lot. And so I am in reality an introvert. And so I have to really, I'm probably a little of both, but if the definition is about kind of where you get your energy from, it's from being by myself. And so I have to really, what has happened, particularly over the last, I would say, year and a half, 2 years, I withdraw a lot and people take it personally because they're like, you're super social. You love people. Like their view of me is, you know, what they see, obviously. And so when I'm not present or I'm not feeling like being as social, they're like, this must be me. Like there must be she doesn't like me. She doesn't. And I'm just like, no, I'm just really tired. And not only, you know, am I a empath, I am the decision maker in a lot of, in this, like the buck stops with me. I also bought a house in this time. And so just to illustrate it, when probably in my first 6 months of having my house, I would walk past my laundry room and I was hearing this pipe dripping.
Yep.
But I just kept walking past it. And then literally one day I was like, oh, I have to get that fixed. Like I would hear it, but it was almost like I was like, oh, the landlord will take care of it. So that's how it feels business-wise. I mean, I actually told someone recently that someone needs to do a course or something on moving from an employee to an entrepreneur, because it's such a mindset shift that, you know, I feel like I'm finally getting there of being like, the buck stops with me. The decisions stop with me. And so I've learned terms like decision fatigue. So I could tell my team, I can't make another decision today. So either you have to make that decision or we have to talk about this another time. And even when they're micro things, I'm like, guys, I've made like 50 decisions today.
From the time that I woke up.
Right. And so, yeah, so it's tough. And I think that the same elements that make my business and brand successful drain me. And so I have to find a balance, because people join because of me. People want to be a partner because of me. But also at times I feel like there's a lot of extraction happening and not a lot of pouring in to me. And so I have to try to, you know, carve that space out for myself. And that a lot of times means me saying no, means me putting up boundaries that, you know, some people are okay with and some people feel some type of way about.
I love this because I'm going to go out of order in this. Like usually I have like a path of the way that I want to like do this discussion, but I'm going to go for it. When the pandemic happened, people asked me, because again, I'm high energy like you. I mean, like you appear to be high energy. I am high energy. I'm like, I bounce off the walls. Yeah. But people are like, I go, how'd you do during the pandemic? I'm like, you were locked down. I'm like, I go, number one, I live in a small town on the water, so I was good. But number two, I'm a Haitian kid. We weren't allowed to go out. So this was designed. This pandemic was designed for every international kid that was not allowed to leave their house other than school and home. So this was like perfect for me. I was in my happy space. How were you during this time? Because like for a year and a half to 2 years, we were home. We were like in a home or in our communities only. No traveling, not like me. And I was like, literally, I was in Morocco in January. In March, I was in Mexico. And I was like, I think I'm going to be stuck in Mexico. And I got home literally 48 hours before the world was locked down. So what happened for you during that time, knowing who you are?
Yeah, I actually, now I'm gonna be careful how I say this. I don't want to go back to people massively dying by the day and all of that. But the at least that first, I would say like March to June, maybe July, I was moving with such ease. I've been on a fast track my whole life. Like I've never felt I've never felt like I could mess up. I've never felt like I could take a break. I remember when I graduated from Harvard with my master's when I was 21 when I graduated. And I remember calling my mother randomly. I lived in Austin at the time, crying. And I was like, I'm gonna just go work for the Gap because I'm just tired. I was like, I'm tired of like bringing work home. I worked in Boston Public Schools at the time. I was like, I'm tired of caring so much about what I do. Like, I just want to like clock in and clock out.
Yep.
So that was the first time ever in my life that for a small amount of time, I was really able to move slowly. And I actually really liked it. I remember I would come downstairs in the morning. I was opening my blinds. I picked up a coffee drinking habit. I was drinking coffee. Like I just was writing. And I wish I could have actually retained some of it because I remember getting antsy around July. Like July is when I was like, okay, y'all, like this is gonna be over. You know, like I actually want to be back out, but I was okay for a couple months. I also in that time was building Boston While Black. It ended up launching July 2020. I still wasn't totally clear it was going to be a business in a sense. Like I knew I was going to monetize it, but I was still consulting and all that then. So I wasn't thinking about how big that it could get. But it gave me permission to slow down. And it gave me, again, back to just being an entrepreneur and a creative. I thrive in those times because then I have to come up with other solutions. So for my family, we started to do, and this is not just my immediate, but my aunts and first cousins and my mother and siblings, we started to do a weekly family Zoom. We had never talked that much as a family, not all together.
I think that's one of the things that everyone found was like, wow, I like my family when it's in this situation. I mean, because the pressure is always on for Thanksgiving, for Christmas,
right.
For a family reunion that we're trying to pull together, but no one wants to like organize it. And nobody like it's too overwhelming. Right. But this moment of time made it really easy for everyone. We
did family Zoom. We probably did it for like a year, every single week. And, you know, something that I'd regretted when my father passed away, we I gave like the short version, but we had a rocky life together. And so there was just a lot of about him that I didn't really know, you know, that because he didn't talk about his past. He was a really great cook. He never wrote down in these recipes. He never passed that stuff on. So I also took the time in the pandemic to, with my mother and her sisters, record their stories. So we would when we got on Zoom, it would be a different sister each time. And they would be interviewed by one of their grandkids or one of their nieces and nephews. And I just asked, you know, I came up with like a set of questions and recorded them on Zoom. And
I love that. What a beautiful gift that is. Yeah. Oh my God. So you did it for a year though. I mean, so what happened after?
I remember it kind of falling apart. Not falling apart, but just when we could go back outside, like, because we were doing them on Saturdays. And so people be like, you know, everybody started to be like, well, I want to go to the beach or I want to, you know, so we kind of got back to wanting to be outside. And then, you know, now we're back, you know, seeing each other in person. But it was a magical moment, you know, where I also similarly did it with a group of women entrepreneurs. A friend of mine called me just to check on, this was probably like 2 or 3 weeks into the pandemic. I think she just was calling to see how people were doing. Ended up talking for like 4 hours and decided because I was a consultant. I had left the place we worked together by then. So I was a consultant and all of my gigs were events. So I was like, what am I going to do? Like, and so we decided, me and my friend, like, okay, I'm gonna invite like 5 to 7 women. You're gonna invite 5 to 7 women, and let's just get on a Zoom this Saturday and talk about how people are gonna pivot their businesses. Again, this is March, so we don't, or this is April. We don't know that this is about to be a year or two. We're just thinking like, what are we gonna do
Couple
for
of
the summer?
weeks. Yeah.
Right. And so we came together on a Saturday. We both invited a number of people, but I think literally for both of us, we had 5 people show up that we invited and had this call, and that it turned into a weekly call for a year and a half. Where every Saturday, so I would have this call with them, and then I would talk to my family. Actually, my family one was first, and then I would talk to them, and we helped each other pivot, think about how to pivot our businesses. Sometimes people would get on crying. We would practice investment pitches that people were doing. They actually pushed me to launch Boston While Black because I was going to pause it, and they were like, "What are you afraid of? Like, just do it." So that was, I was just, I guess in short, doing what I always do, create community.
No, and I think that's one of the things that individuals that are creatives that draw, like people are drawn to you, people draw like we can actually ask people and people will come. I mean, so for me, this was the podcast. I mean, the podcast was, hey, I just want to check. It was like a guilty pleasure because I wanted to check on everyone. So I made a list of everyone I knew around the world, the entrepreneurs, small businesses. I'm like, oh, I just want to check on you. And then I would like turn on my phone on Instagram. Oh, a small business did this. I'm like, and I called them. I mean, I'm a former TV and radio producer. So I called them like, hey, would you want to be on podcast? I'm like, okay. No one was saying no. So it was great to actually be able to hear everyone's stories. And Kylie, a lot of businesses started during the pandemic because you had no other choice. But we're not going to talk about the business yet. So we're going to rewind. Yeah. So we'll call it growing up in your household, education-wise, where'd you go to school? What was your major? And why'd you choose it?
Yeah, so I went to, so again, my foundation really was set in Albany. Even just my expectations around education, I went to elementary and middle school were within walking distance of my house, and probably 99% Black schools. And then I went to high school, Albany High, where everyone comes. So it's like everyone goes to school around the city and then pours into Albany High, which was a more diverse, but huge, maybe like a 2,000.
Can I ask you a quick question? So yes, we know Albany is the capital of New York. I go, but in regards to diversity, like, I mean, I know nothing about Albany in regards to like what it is. So even you just saying it's a diverse location, I mean, tell me a little bit about Albany and growing up there, because I mean, again, we know Albany is the capital, but no, I mean, New York City, Brooklyn, Queens, we know the boroughs. That's about it.
It's actually not really that diverse. It's interesting. It wasn't now before I left home, I'm like, yeah, Albany's Black. But really it's where I was concentrated, and so, and where my life was concentrated. It's probably similar to Boston in that probably 20 to 25% Black. The Black neighborhoods are very concentrated. So it's like my life was very, though my parents were, and this is what actually helped me later in life. I got a lot of enrichment. I was on trips and museums and all that. But where I lived for a lot of my life was, within a small radius where I lived and went to school. And, really mixed income, but mostly lower income neighborhood. And Albany is interesting because, New York City, you don't know how many fights, and I mean verbal fights, I've gotten into about Albany, particularly once I went to college in Atlanta, like, oh, you from the country? And I had to be like, no, it's not the country, but people just know New York City, right? So in comparison, they think the rest of the state is nothing. Or they'd be like, oh, you live in Canada. And I'm like, no.
Albany, snow, like during the summer, you go hiking. During the wintertime, there's lots of snow. That's all you think about. Or at least, and again, I was born in Brooklyn, New York. That's all I think about when I think about Albany.
What's interesting about it, though we are called upstate because we're the beginning of upstate, we're way closer to the Bronx than even Syracuse. Like Albany's 6 hours from Buffalo. It's probably like 2.5 hours from Syracuse. I could get to the Bronx in like an hour and a half. So it just was, it just is an interesting, I would say that it's probably more the middle of the state than upstate, but, and a lot of people from New York move there. It's cheaper. It's actually, particularly over the, I guess when I was growing up, but particularly now, a lot of violence. There's just not a lot of opportunity there. It is a really small city other than it being the capital but it's really small. Not a lot of resources and opportunity. So my parents, particularly my mother, was adamant. I mean, my mother actually made me go to Spelman. She was like, you have to leave here. I had gotten a small scholarship to a local college because I was going to be a teacher at the time, but my mother was like, nope, absolutely not. I mentioned my mother was going to school while I was growing up. So she graduated from college when I was in middle school. But my extended family, my sister, my cousins, they had gone to HBCUs. So I knew about HBCUs and had been to visit a number of historically Black colleges. My sister, I went to Hampton. And so, so I had this experience, but what was great about my experience, which even though I'm from Albany and people have different views of Albany, it wasn't until I got to Boston that I was ever really in the minority. Like I always had Black teachers. I always had Black leadership in the school. Because of my father being so civically engaged, we would have the city councilors at our house. And, that was just like the norm to me.
Yep.
So, and then I went to a Black college. Now what I experienced going to college was class differences that I had never, it was like a shock to my system.
Wait, hold up for a second before we talk about that. What was your majors? What was your major?
I majored in psychology and minored in education. So I wanted to be a teacher growing up. Yep. I got to middle school. My middle school was crazy. I can't even think of it. It ended up getting shut down like years later. So when I got to middle school, and again, I was always a very observant kid. Like I was always soaking stuff in, and I was like, kids have a lot of issues. And so at that time, I was like, you know what? I think I'm gonna be a school psychologist. And so I ended up majoring in psychology, but minoring in education when I went to Spelman.
Your experience in regards of class, it's when you are from the West Indies. I mean, it's very clear. But then it's like West Indies when we come into the United States, it's like West Indies versus America. And so it's like we work very hard, education. I mean, like there's no getting around education when you're from the islands. It is number one priority at all times. Then family and stuff like that. But I mean, education is top. You do whatever, like families do whatever it takes to make sure that the kids get the best education at the best schools. You go to school, you're focusing on your majors, and then you're dealing with class issues. What blew you out of the water about that one? Because you're in Albany, but you've been to Manhattan, you've been to Brooklyn, you've been around. It's not like you don't know about it. Why did it surprise you when you went to school?
I mean, I would say even in my own family, like my extended family. So again, my mother, probably in her own words, was like a little bit of the Black sheep in a sense. She rebelled. So she came from my grandfather was a preacher. My grandmother was a teacher. Mm-hmm. They weren't rich, but they were considered middle class in that time because of their professions. And, if she had stayed close to home, she probably would have had a different experience. But because she chose to leave and come further up north, she struggled in ways, and we struggled in ways because my mother, she's just stubborn. Like she just was like, I don't want help. She's that type of person. So,
well, when you get enough no's, or when you get people that just don't see the they don't see all that you can do, you're adamant about, like, now when people want to help, you're like, no, I'm good.
And she had bad school experiences. She had a bad relationship to like education, and so she just wanted to do her own thing. She dropped out of college. Like she just wanted to do her own thing. And so, so I'm just saying that to say, yes, I had a mix, but there's even, I would say we were lower middle class, but I'm talking about, I got to college and there was wealth, like generational, people were having conversations, things I had never heard of. Tiffany and Company, Basquiat paintings in their house, driving Jaguars to school. Like, I just didn't know that Black people were living like that. I had a very limited.
By the way, most people don't know Black people live that way. Just want you to know.
Right. Yeah. And I had a very limited view. I loved the Cosby Show. I loved Different World. That's part of why I wanted to go to Spelman. But it was still like far away to me. And so, and I, growing up around a lot of like community violence and other stuff that I experienced, unfortunately, I had normalized it. So it wasn't until I got to Spelman that I realized a lot of stuff I experienced wasn't okay. Frankly, like I would be sharing these stories and girls would be like, you did what? You saw what? You know, and I went into a shell. There's Spelman women now who I know who were like, I didn't talk to you in college. I still had a little New York chip on my shoulder. I was really, really small. Like I'm a little under 5'4" now. So I probably was a little shorter than I am now. And I was like 100 pounds. And so I just, when people are small, they try to, like I had like this, don't mess with me kind of demeanor. And
Chihuahua.
Huh?
You were the Chihuahua.
My nickname was Big Sheen. Like I had all of like, like, and so I had this, and some of that had come from, where I'd grown up. I just had to have like protect myself a lot when I was out and about. And so yeah, I actually wish I could do college over because I experienced such that when I first like kind of in my first couple of months, I was resistant to some of the experience that I think I could have benefited from. For example, I didn't travel abroad. I was very, now I'm like, oh, my Spelman sister, but I'm like, I don't know these girls. They're not my sisters. I had that kind of type of attitude for a couple of years. And, but yeah, so I had never seen, I don't even like, people use the term Black excellence and they use it in so many ways, but it truly was like, and I don't just mean, I'm not talking about money wise, just like from all different places. I just had never met Black people from all over the country and all over. It is, if I have children, I would want them to have that experience. It's a very fortifying experience. Like you feel seen every single day. But coming from the experiences I was coming from initially, it was a shock to me. And I said my family's from Georgia, so I got to get closer to some of my extended family and cousins who took care of me while I was down there, and they were used to it. They were just used to Black middle class neighborhoods and used to like I just wasn't used to that.
For me, I think that's like where last year I spent a month. I just needed to feel closer to the islands, and I spent a month in Guadeloupe, because in Haiti is just very dangerous right now, so I can't just go to Haiti for a month. But I went to Guadeloupe because they speak French only, and then there's a lot of Haitians there, and look, their slang is Haitian Creole. It's sounded like Haitian Creole. It's a little bit off. I shouldn't say off, but it's a little different in regards to words. But if someone's talking to me, I know exactly what they're saying in French and or Creole. When I went to restaurants, when I went for a run, when I went like hiking, like literally like you see the Caribbeans all over, and it's like you stand taller. You stand taller, you breathe clearer. It was a whole different essence of I'm home. And so for me, the way that you felt when you were like the experience of like what you want to like give to your children one day if you have children, but also what you see now is what I'm feeling now when I go to the islands, and you're like, oh my God, just to be with the islanders and we think the same, we talk the same, our goals. It's just like really nice versus having to justify to everybody why you do what you do.
Yeah. It's a feeling that, people, I still now, question why are HBCUs needed? Yes. Like I was a psych major, as I mentioned. When you go to college, you have, you pick classes, but you have like a major class like that you have to take. And it's usually a lot of folks. So my psychology 101, if it was called something like that, as a freshman, it probably was 80 or 90 people in the class. I went to class, my very first class. For whatever reason, I skipped the second class. I have no idea why. And so the next week, I was in the psych building in the elevator, and my professor for that class got on the elevator with me. I've only been to this class once, though, and there's almost 100 people in that class. So we're just both on the elevator silent. And then she says, so Miss Collier, why weren't you in class last week?
Oh.
And I said, you know me? And she was like, of course I know you.
Oh, okay.
And I just was like, It just, I mean, obviously I was scared because I felt like I was in trouble, but also it just was like, wow,
She saw you.
like, wow, here I am, this like little peanut girl, you know, and so, and that's your experience the whole time. And
Well,
yeah,
all right. I mean, I'm going to call you out on that one. It was also the teacher. I mean, not all teachers are made the same. So this
yeah,
one stood
I
out as
agree.
well.
I agree. Yeah, yeah. And it's and I don't mean it to say that's your experience every single day,
Yeah.
but it is it, you know, sometimes the argument people have is like, oh, well, that is not real world, you know, that's not real life. But it's kind of like, yeah, exactly. So getting that foundation, I could not have gone to Harvard first.
Yeah.
Like, and I still struggled at Harvard, but having that foundation and having that, just coming with that, like, okay, I know what it feels like to be seen. I know it helped me to then create it for other people. Launching Boston While Black, your experience in Guadeloupe. I went to Ghana for 2 weeks. That's actually what gave me the courage to launch Boston While Black. I had the idea for a long time. And I went to Ghana at the end of 2019. And I spent 2 weeks just immersed in it was both being immersed in being Black, but not having to talk about being Black all the time.
And I love that you just said that, because I think that's one of the things where I get when I go to the islands. When I'm in Guadeloupe and I go, or even like Northern Africa, you're going to Togo, again, French speaking. You don't have to ever, I mean, you don't ever have to, it is, I walk in the room, I am who I am. And I don't have to sit there and make the conversation because someone clearly has not ever done the conversation. So I'm like, I'm going to start the conversation because you clearly have not talked about being Black or being around Black or having a person that's Black. And so it's nice when you're like, we don't have to do that here. Yeah. We don't, like, it's just like, like, you're Sheena, I'm Jody. There he is. There it is.
I had never experienced that before. Spelman in Ghana was the only 2 times I experienced that. So I didn't realize until I went there how taxing it is mentally to have to be doing that all the time.
All right, wait, pause. We're gonna go back to Ghana. So you're at Spelman. You're there for 4 years. You graduate. Job before Harvard or go right to Harvard?
I went to. I was a psych major, so it's almost like you got to go to grad school. Because like, what are you really gonna do with a psych degree that's in your field? So my plan was to. I still was on the path to become a counselor and like school counseling, and so I applied to almost all. Either side, you know, they have a PsyD, a doctor of psychology. So PsyD or master's, counseling psychology, community psychology. And that was really what my path was going to be. There was a grad school fair on the campus one day and Harvard was there. And so, and this, I kind of walked by it like, there's like, I was a good student, but I was like, I'm not going to get into Harvard. But I stopped and talked to them and they told me about the program, which I later did, which was at that time called Childhood Risk and Prevention. And so it was a mix of, it was at the School of Education, but it was focused on creating prevention and intervention programs for children. And I was like, oh, this is like right up my alley.
Yeah.
So I, not only did I apply, I don't even know where I got this direction from, but I looked up the professors at the school, found a couple whose research I was, you know, interested in, started sending them emails periodically. Hey, my name is Sheena Collier. I'm going to be applying. You know, when I get there, I would love to learn more about what you're doing. Yep. And I just got focused on it. It just became like a mission for me. Like, you know what? It's like, part of me was like, I'm not going to get into Harvard, but part of me was like, nah, I'm going to get into Harvard. Like, I'm going to put my all into it. And so later, when I got on campus, one of those professors did tell me, like, when she saw my application, she had remembered that I was sending these emails. And so, yeah, I had been to Boston a couple of times. When you live in Albany, Boston is like a field trip place. You come to the Museum of Science. But that was the next hurdle. You know, I'm sure we'll talk that I was like, oh, this means I got to go to Boston. Because I really wanted to stay in the South. Everywhere else I had applied was in Georgia. I had a boyfriend at the time. So it was in Georgia and maybe, in Columbia. So that was really Columbia and Harvard were the only places up here that I applied to.
So did you get into the other ones?
I got into Columbia, and that's actually where I wanted to go. When you grow up in Albany, your like dream is New York City. Like, I'm gonna go live in a big city, and and so and then yes, I got into some of the counseling programs, which, you know, in retrospect, I'm glad I didn't do, because they were those programs where you get like a master's on the way to your PhD or PsyD. Yep. I couldn't have done another 5 years of school. Like,
you know what? I go back and forth about that one, but that's a whole different conversation.
Yeah, I'm glad that I took the path that I took. But yeah, so I got into a couple of others. But you know, you get into Harvard. My mother was like, Sheena, what are we even talking about? Like, why are we even looking?
Columbia's up there as well. I have many relatives that have gone to Columbia. I got
into teachers college. No, very same. I think on the same level. But my mother, the same way she made me go to Spelman, she did, because I wanted to go to Howard or Temple, Hampton, where my sister had gone. And my mother was really adamant about Spelman. And I actually didn't ask her until like a year ago why she was so adamant, because she didn't know anyone that ever went to Spelman.
Yeah.
And she actually said, and this is like, my mother discredits herself a lot, again, because she wasn't academically successful. And, you know, she became a state worker and retired from being a state worker. She sometimes, with my success, she's like, oh, I didn't really have anything to do with that. But her foresight as a mother,
yeah,
she literally said, I said, why did you want me to go to Spelman so badly? She said, you and I went to this info session in New York City of Spelman alum. And she said, I was watching them up there, and I said, this is how she's going to get into a different network. And she just had this foresight, and she really pushed me to.
And she saw it, but you didn't. And you were in the same room with her.
Yeah. And I didn't want to go. I was like, it's an all girls school. Like, I was like, I don't want to do that. And she was like, I knew I had to get you out of Albany, and I needed to get you, this was going to be your entry, the way you got into. So similarly with Harvard, she, you know, the School of Education, the masters are 1 school year. She's like, Sheena, you could do 1 school year at Harvard to be able to say you went to Harvard for the rest of your life. Like, you can do that. And so we came up here to visit, and then I was like, oh, absolutely not.
Please tell me why. Please tell me why absolutely not. Because I was raised here. So I mean, like the Haitian root, Haiti, New York, Florida. My dad came here to a cousin's graduation. He's like, Charlestown, Charles River. Ooh, it's destiny. We're gonna move here. My mom's like, we know nobody. No, we know no one in Massachusetts. What are you doing? And my dad, literally, he went back to New York in a weekend, packed up all his stuff. My sister and my mom, boom, we moved to Boston. Knew no one. So, but then we had, Marie St. Fleur is my cousin. So like we had one relative, and then we had a couple more come in, but we didn't have, it was just like, we came in here, but I've been here pretty much all of my life. So I know the good, the bad, and difference, but I can live through a lot of things, because every other weekend we were in New York, once a month we were in Montreal. So I was with relatives, and I wasn't allowed to leave the house. So for me, it didn't really bother me. So for you, when you said no way, what was the no way?
So I'm coming from Spelman, along with it being an HBCU. I had an amazing social life. Like, it just was, I had fun, and I was young. I graduated when I was 20 from college. So when I came up here to visit, so I had been accepted into Harvard, but I had not accepted my acceptance yet. And so they had this reception where you could come and meet people. I was one of very few Black people in the room. It was just something I wasn't used to. Mm-hmm. Everyone was a lot older than me, because grad school.
You graduate younger.
So I was one of few people coming straight from college. I mean, this is going to sound crazy, but, HBCUs are dry campuses. And I'm not saying people aren't drinking, but it's just not allowed. Mm-hmm. And so
did not know that. Good to know. I had no idea.
Most of them are, yeah. And so this reception had like wine, and I just was overwhelmed. I'm 20. I think I turned 21 in that time. And I just was like, it just felt very adult and very white and very just like proper, and I just was like,
but wait a second. You just said earlier how like you weren't used to very wealthy Black people, but they had wine. There was like, so you were,
but we weren't having those type of events, because again, we couldn't do that on campus. So It's not like I was going to, I'm sure people were doing it other places, but so I'm at this reception. I'm with my mother and my brother, and literally like in the corner, kind of, and I'm just like, Mom, no, I can't do it. And this woman comes up to me, a little bit older than me, Black woman, like maybe a couple years older than me, and she had went to Spelman. She had went to Spelman, and she had went to Harvard, to the ed school, and she was like, I need you here. And I was telling her all my concerns. She's like, if you come here, I will take care of you. And she's still my friend. She was like, I will look out for you if you come up here.
And that was the decision maker.
Yeah. And I was, and she met my mother, and she promised my mother, like, I'll make sure she's okay. And yeah, she saw me like cowering, over there in the corner. And so we later became close. We started the Spelman chapter. I became the president of the alumni chapter and all that. And so it was, but even I still I struggled when I got here. Like my first couple of months were really hard. And I think that it was a little bit of external and a little bit of internal. I would say to people that I felt like I was getting access to places academically that I wasn't prepared for socially. And so, now as an adult, an older adult, and seeing stuff like the, what did they call it? I don't remember what they call it, but the kind of college scandal where parents were.
Oh yeah, the ones like, yeah, your mind blown
and all that, right? I just had this belief that like these people must belong here. I'm just kind of like skating in. And which now I know like makes no sense. I got a 4.0 at Harvard. Like I belonged there. I worked hard to get there. I worked hard while I was there, but just in that moment, it just was, I had just been flung so quickly into new situations. I mean, though I was at Spelman for 4 years, I had been in Albany for 17 years. So I just kept getting this new access that I just wasn't prepared for. And no one in my family could really guide me through it. Mm-hmm. Even now as an entrepreneur, there's no entrepreneurs in my family. So they cheer me and support, but there's just a certain level of doing it by myself. And I mean by myself in relation to my family that I'm doing. And so that's how I felt going into these spaces. They like, Sheen's at Harvard. But no one could really, I couldn't really, my mother didn't have, or my father, they had no concept of what I was experiencing.
And every single time you walked into a situation, you nailed it. So of course, now you graduate from Harvard. What do you do now? From Harvard, talk to me about from Harvard to when you literally went to Ghana, because Ghana opens the door.
Yeah. So that's about like 10 to 12 years or so. I decided at Harvard that I didn't want to be a counselor because of being an empath. That's when I really was like, I don't think I'm going to be able to do this every day. I'm not going to be able to soak in. And of course, they teach you techniques and things you do to not carry your clients. But I was like, I don't think I'm going to be able to do it. I had to take a counseling psychology class where you mimicked like having a client, and you had to record your sessions and all of it. And just going through that process, I was like, yeah, I think I need to be a little more hands-off. And so I decided to do more, like they call it more the prevention side. So I did like after school programs and family engagement, more community level versus one-on-one. And so I worked immediately. I mean, I was still trying to leave Boston. I was like, as soon as I get this degree, I'm leaving. I wanted to go back to Atlanta or go to New York finally. And Boston was just the first place I got a job. Like my lease was up June 30th. I think I got offered a job June 10th. And I just was like, I have to take this job because it's the first one I got. And it was at the Home for Little Wanderers. And so I went from there to Boston Public Schools, the big sister. Because I think of, me, and also just the size of Boston, my career just elevated really quickly. I went from grad school to supervising and building teams within like 2 years. And I always had jobs, again, like I said, where I was typically the first person in the job. And I always had in my title was like partnerships or community. So it forced me to learn Boston really fast. I had to, my first title was actually resource coordinator. So I had to, you could call the Home for Little Wanderers and ask me anything, and I had to know how to connect you to it. I'm a parent. I want to go back to school. I need to get food stamps. I want to get involved in my kids' parent council. So in order for me to do the job, I like hit the ground in Boston. I was having informational interviews with executive directors, like anything I could do to learn the city. So I learned the city really fast and just became known really quickly because I was doing that. And so my career just in education took off really fast. And so though I for a long time had one foot out, I would go to New York City every weekend. I professionally was just having success. I was like, I can't leave here.
So how many years have you been here?
I came here in August 2004. So almost 19 years. I did sneak out once. I left for 2 years. I moved to DC from 2011 to 13. But so I came here almost 19 years ago. I've been here about 17.
And you came back. So what made you come back? Because one foot's out the door, you have this like amazing career path. I mean, like literally you're building this amazing career, the education, the whole entire thing, but you're like, you literally could have gone anywhere around this country, anywhere around the world.
Yeah.
With access of the education that you built. Why come back to this? Like, why come back to here?
I know. So a boy is what
it's always boy. It's a boy. It's a job. It's it's school. It's the three reasons why people come here.
Yeah. So while I was building my career here, my first kind of go around here, I was interviewing for jobs in New York City because I still wanted to leave. And then I met a boy who we were doing kind of similar, like parallel work in Boston. And so I decided to stop pursuing leaving. And so we dated up until the time I left to go to DC. I went to DC for 2 years, and then he brought me back. he sent me what at that time was like my dream job. And he was, I was very adamant, like, I'm not coming back to Boston. And he's also part of the reason why I left Boston. I was like, I'm not coming back to Boston. And he sent me this job, and it really was, he was like, Sheena, this is your dream job. And I was like, it really is. And so, you know what? I was definitely qualified for this job, Jody, but I don't even think I interviewed for it. Like, I feel like some strings were being pulled by him because it was an organization he was involved in. And so I remember them calling me to ask me for my resume, and they knew who I was, but I don't remember even doing like a formal interview until basically I almost had the job. And so he came and got me, brought me back to the U-Haul, brought me back to Boston. He's way out the picture now, but he served his purpose. He played his role, and he was from here. So he actually taught me a lot about Boston. Like I think I got a level of insight that a lot of transplants don't get, because he was teaching me like, okay, this person is this person, this is the history of these people. He was in politics, so he was teaching me a lot about how Boston ran, and he definitely it shortcut some of my kind of learning the city. So shout out to him. He played his role. And
you've always lived. So I've never lived in the city. I mean, I've worked in the city once. Like, I mean, that's when I met you. That was the first time and only time I've ever worked in the city. I've always worked outside, or when I was the press secretary for the governor, I worked for the state. But I've never lived. I'm a suburbs girl. I've always lived in the suburbs. I always lived like close to the ocean. Being an island kid, I need to see the water at all times. So being in the city, have you ever thought about being outside the city, or is this is where you want to be at all times?
I live outside the city now.
Oh, okay. Because like that's one of the things where, and I asked this because so many times you hear about the negativity, and we'll talk about the negativity of the city, but you hear about the city. You don't hear about like the outskirts.
Yeah.
You don't hear about the state. You hear about the one bubble of the Boston city. So that's why I was wondering if you had, when you were in there, you learned about the key players, but what was your thoughts about the rest of the state?
I'm going back and forth, and not too far, like Quincy, Randolph. Like And then also lived in the neighborhoods of Boston. I've never lived. I think Randolph is the furthest I've lived. And I love both. It's interesting because I am a city person. Like I've grown up living in the city, but when I was ready to buy a house, in Boston's prices, is what really took me back outside the city. And it's been interesting, particularly building what I'm building, because I'm super tuned in to the city, to Boston, but there's times when I'm like, I'm not going to come to that because I just don't feel like driving back into Boston. And, so I've thought even recently a lot about buying, at least an investment property in a city, so that I have a stake in Boston. But I actually think, particularly for, because I focus on Black people in Boston, it's a miss to not focus on the surrounding neighborhoods because, that's where a lot of us go. And so you can't really you actually can't talk about the Black Boston experience without talking about Randolph and Stoughton and Milton and
Brockton and Lowell and New Bedford. And for me, like I was raised with a lot of Cape Verdeans and a lot of Haitians. And so I know the New Bedford area, I know all that area. And so I always tell people, I go, Boston is one small bubble. And by the way, most people work in Boston, but they live outside and there's all these different cultures. So whenever I hear people talking about like, there's no culture, I'm like, there's so much of it. If you walk outside and like take Armenian, Watertown, all Armenian, the Greek community and on and on. I can go on and on because for me, I've seen my state, but I don't just focus on the city. I see the state.
A lot of Bostonians don't. And people, Boston is one of those places where Bostonians are so adamant about like, oh, no, that's Dedham. Oh, no, that's, and it's like, okay, it's greater Boston, like there's a line, and it's, I try to put myself in people's shoes because I don't live in the place where I grew up. So my mind is more open to around boundaries. And, if I still lived in Albany, I might be adamant, like, she's not from Albany, she's from Guilderland, And so I get it. And I try to just be respectful of other people's experiences. But I do think, especially if we're talking about culture, if we're talking about economic development, you have to look at, because I live on the outskirts of Boston, but I'm a huge contributor to Boston.
Yep.
And there's a lot of folks like that. Unless you work for the city hall and you're required to live in Boston, a lot of the leaders of Boston don't live in Boston.
Yep. Yep. You have taken many roles. You decide to go, why did you decide to go to Ghana? And what was it about Ghana coming full back that you decided to create this amazing organization that you have? And let's talk about what made you think about it? Why was it needed? How did it start? And what has propelled you to work so hard to make sure that is one of the strongest entities in town?
Yeah. Thank you for that. Specifically with Ghana, so 2019 was the kind of commemoration of, it was 400 years since the beginning of the transatlantic slave trade, 1619. And so, enslaved Africans came through a number of different portals, but particularly if you're in the United States, it's likely that your ancestors came through Ghana or, somewhere in Western Africa. And so the Ghana, kudos to them on the tourism, because it was a tourism play. Now it's also heartfelt, but it was a tourism play. They did something called the Year of the Return. And they basically were like, Black Americans come home this year.
And I, as I recall, that was done because in Israel, the kids can go to Israel for the summer, where, when I was in Africa, they were mirroring that to the kids get to go for free of charge to go to Israel to understand where you come from, why we exist, why we were annihilated, and why we need to then rebuild. So it was mirrored, and it's like growing, but it wasn't growing as fast. Is that it? From what I understood.
Yeah, they probably did. Yeah, because it is it had those same tenants, and they did it during December. December is a big kind of coming home time in probably across the continent, but particularly in West Africa, because outside of the United States, they also have a lot of people that live in London, and so people come home for the holidays. And so all year they were doing activities, and there's a number of Black American celebrities who have Ghanaian heritage. So you saw like Boris Kujo leading trips there, and there was this buzz leading up all year, but culminating in December where they started Afrochella, kind of like Coachella here, even though I just saw legally they had to change the name, they got sued. And so they had Afrochella, and then again, the president of the country did this amazing, I'm calling it, I know it was tourism because I think with a business perspective, and I recognize what they were doing, but on the marketing of it, it was it made you feel like, ooh, like I belong, because Black Americans, right? You don't know where you belong really. Yeah. And so they were like, you belong here. They were doing, and they still are doing this. They were doing real estate deals for Black Americans. Like they were doing, you could get dual citizenship. Like it was amazing. So I went with a group of my friends for 2 weeks. We left on Christmas Day and stayed whatever 2 weeks is. So to early January. Jody, like one, I felt like I received a K through 12 history lesson in 2 weeks. Yeah. I was like, I'm so ignorant. I know none of this. Like,
when we get out of our boxes, it's amazing.
I never connected to history in school. I hated it because I like stories. I don't remember dates. I don't remember, I'm supposed to remember General such and such's name. I just don't. If I don't understand the context and the story, I'm just like that as a person. You can't start in the middle of a story with me. Like I'm like, okay, wait a minute, Jody. First of all, tell me what you were wearing. Like, and like, how did you get there? Did you take the train or were you parked? Like,
I need to know the same person, because people are like, why do you need to know the details? Just like, you stop telling me the story. I'm like, no, tell me the details.
Yeah, I need context. So, and I've just realized this as I got older, why I never connected to history, because, it just was like, learn these people because you should. And I'm like, but I don't understand why. So I got an amazing education. I just had amazing experiences. Even me, who recognizes the propaganda, right, around how we are in the United States sold, Haiti, Africa, like we get certain images. I know this intellectually, but I still was surprised when I got there, like, oh, especially the Capitol, like, oh, this looks like I could be in DC, like, and so that was just and then it was like just a realization of how basic we are. We were just like, there's another billboard with Black people. There's another billboard with Black. We were like, these aren't even Black products. These are just Black people. We started counting. We started taking pictures of the billboards. Every commercial, I was like, oh, it's Black people again. Like it just
so you know, when I'm in Guadeloupe, I have photos. I do the same thing because it's something that you're like, full disclosure, when I'm watching commercials here, whenever I see a commercial that's too Black to Black people, I giggle because I'm a marketing person and I'm like, that's a check box. Okay, good job, check box. But when you're in other countries, you're like, this is the way it is. Norm. It's like, which is funny. Yes, so I'm in the same boat as you. Like when you leave, and you're like, your brain is like, are you freaking kidding me? This is amazing.
And it's just normal, right? And so we did a lot of partying. They partied till like 7 a.m. We did a lot, amazing food, amazing cultural experiences. And then I think this was in my second week, maybe somewhere in the middle. So my, of course, all the men are happy. All these Black American women are there. And so my friends had met these guys that they went out with a couple of times. And one day they were just like hanging out with us in the lobby of our hotel, and they brought another one of their friends with them that I started talking to. And he was just, and this is, when you're on vacation, you're just he was like, you want to go to a baby naming ceremony tomorrow? And I was like, sure. And he was like, all right, I'll be back to pick you up in the morning. And so what it is they don't name their babies for a month because they want to learn their personality.
Mhm.
And
Hard to do
so
that when you're in the United States because they won't let you leave the hospital without a name.
I know. So he so no, he invites me to his baby naming ceremony. Then he's like, actually, I'm going to a wedding tomorrow too. Do you want to come? And I was like, yeah. And I had happened to have bought a dress the day before in the market. So I had like an African print dress. He came and picked me up like 8, 9 a.m.
Wait, pause. For everyone that's listening, in other countries, it is a lot safer. And no matter what you hear in the news, it is a lot safer when someone asks you. When I lived in Australia, people were like, I go, hey, do you want to come to my house for dinner? I'm like, I said yes. And everyone's like, what do you mean? I'm like, it's a whole different trust. Yeah. It's trust. There's a lot
I don't even know what it was because I'm a super suspicious person. And I pick up on, because I'm empath. I pick up on my spidey senses. I never, I've felt very safe. One, my people knew who I was with and we had all exchanged numbers. But also, it just was like, there was a genuine happiness. Well, I'll get to that in a second because I asked him why they were so happy that Black Americans were there. And so he came and picked me up. Here I am. We're both like dressed to go to a wedding. He's like, oh, I got to go to the car wash first. So we go to the car wash in Ghana, which is very different than here. It's all hand wash. And so we're just sitting there and I'm just having a regular day in Ghana. We show up, the baby naming ceremony is at someone's house and they don't know that I'm coming. And so we get there and he's just like, hey, I can't remember what his relation was to these people. I think it's like his coworker. Yep. I said, Sheena, she's one of our sisters from America. They're, oh my God, welcome, sister. These folks have this mansion. It's beautiful. All this, food. And they shouted me out during the baby naming ceremony. I didn't know most of what they were saying, but obviously I know at some point they said, and our sister from America. And I couldn't, I couldn't follow a lot of it, but I could feel it. Mm-hmm. And they bring all the elders there and they hold the baby. Like it was just amazing. We had amazing food. The wedding was like another couple hours. And so in between, we went by his church and then we went to a coffee shop to kill time. Mm-hmm. So we're just sitting here talking. And I don't know what was said, but I just busted out crying. And, what? And he said, what's going on? And I said, I didn't realize how heavy how much heaviness I carry about being Black until I felt so light, Jody. Like it just was an overwhelming feeling of just how we're just sitting in a coffee shop in the middle of Ghana. Everyone that works here is Black. We've just had this day of community and I just got overwhelmed by it and I started crying and I said, I didn't realize how heavy I felt until I felt light. And that's when I asked them, I said, everyone here has been so friendly. People are coming up to me in the street. They could tell I'm American. I actually probably was like the lightest person. He actually asked me, was I white? And I was like, no, why would you think that? And he was like, look around. Do you see anyone your complexion? Yeah. And so I said, why are you all so welcoming of Black Americans? And he said, because we see your plight. We watch you all and what you go through. And I kind of was like, do Ghanaians feel some responsibility? Because obviously there were Africans that helped to facilitate the slave trade. And so I asked them, like, is there some guilt, by Ghanaians? And because some people, Black Americans, have been, there's actually a Black woman there from Boston that lives there. She runs Enterprise, the car rental service. Mm-hmm. And I got to meet her. And she said that she wouldn't move there. I think she wanted to be apologized to or something, because obviously they played a part in facilitating it. Yeah. Like not knowing fully what they were contributing to, but
the thing is, so this is one of those moments where she wanted to be apologized, but should she apologize? Look, how are you living your life if you're waiting for someone to apologize to you?
The short story, she was from Boston. She met her husband here, who's Ghanaian. There's a big Ghanaian population in Worcester. Yeah. She wouldn't move with him though. I think the country did end up apologizing. And for some reason she wouldn't move before them. So I was asking him, like, is that why people are being so friendly? And he was like, no, I think it's that he's like, we feel sorry for y'all. Like we see what you deal with being Black Americans and we genuinely like want you to feel how we feel here, you know, and now this is someone who is having a certain experience. Now everyone's not having his experience in Ghana. So, you know, we had later conversations where he was a little blind to like some of the poverty and but it just was this yeah, then we show up at the wedding. The wedding is his college roommate's sister.
Yep.
So he has a seat at like the family table. So he's just like, hey guys, this is my friend Sheena. She's here with me. Oh, welcome, Sheena. I'm at the head table at the reception. And they must have been like a big deal because this wedding had to be like 500-600 people. The vice president of the country was there. It just was I just was like, so as I was thinking about Boston While Black or whatever I wanted to launch, it's like I just wanted to give people a little slice of that feeling. It helps me to put into a feeling like this is how I want people to feel. That, you know, we're not gonna feel it every day here, but like more regularly. Like I would like to create the space for people to feel this love, this lightness that I'm feeling. I just was moving about. I didn't have any cares or any worries, and I just wanted people to feel that. And so I was like, how can I at least do that for people? Create a space for that, you know, within this bigger crazy place that we live, for people to feel like that. So when I came back, I think I launched it maybe 2 or 3 weeks later.
So what happens when someone signs up and says, I want to be part of Boston While Black? What was your vision? What is it? What do people get out of it?
Yeah, well, my vision was thwarted a little by COVID. So, because I came back January 2020, I was like, oh, I'm creating this membership community. And at the time, in which we're getting back to it now, but at the time, what I wanted to do was broker across the city, like, oh, you're a member of Boston While Black, you get free membership here, or you get access to this, or you get special deals here, and just kind of, and then also planning our own events. And so, you know, then March 2020 happened. And, you know, again, to your question earlier about my pandemic experience, not only personally, but professionally, it probably was actually one of the best things that ever happened, because for some reason, I'm sure fear, I was going to build the waiting list for Boston While Black all 2020. Like I was putting off, and I had this plan to do all these pop-ups and like stuff I didn't need to do. I had the business case. I knew that people wanted it, but I was just still afraid to do it. And so with the pandemic happening, I had a wait list at that time of maybe like 200 people. I started to hold these listening sessions throughout April with people on the wait list. One, to genuinely offer support. I had been a consultant for a while at that point. So I was like, I know how to work from home, but for a lot of people, that was a jolt. And so I just wanted to offer my support. But then I also said, you know, so if I do build this community, would you pay for it? Like, what's going on? And people were like, yeah, I actually need community more now. So we launched July 27th, 100 founding members, sold out in about 8 hours. And for that whole first year, it was a digital, we have an app, we have like a digital platform. I did a lot in that March to July to build out a digital space. I went with an already existing platform and just customized it. And so what it was for during COVID was monthly virtual events. I mean, it's almost like in person. We had panels, we had parties, we did wellness nights, because remember in this time also then George Floyd got murdered and Breonna Taylor got murdered. So there was just a lot happening. And so I was curating, I taught myself how to do, I used to do these parties called virtual vibes. We would have like hundreds of people from across, it started to spread across the country. And so I would hire a DJ, like it was like a real party on Zoom. Mm-hmm. And so that's what it was initially, was just this way for people to have community during the pandemic. As we've come back outside, there's still that digital component, mm-hmm. but we curate stuff around the city for our members, and as well as being a resource. So you can come on our app and say, oh, I'm looking for someone to get my hair done, or I'm looking for a Black doctor, or people have gotten jobs, because we have corporate partners. Mm-hmm. So because of our former employer, I had a lot of these corporate relationships as well. Mm-hmm. And so I went to companies and said, hey, part of your, I'm not a DEI, I don't do that. I don't do unconscious bias. I don't do, but what I do know how to do is create community and belonging. And I think that should also be a part of your DEI strategies, is investing in the livability for your employees outside of work. And so we partner with a number of companies to provide Boston While Black membership as a perk for their Black employees.
That's good. I mean, that I love. I think that's one of the moments where when people hear of anything that has Black, they just assume D&I. And for me personally, it drives me crazy only because back in the day when people were getting paid a crazy amount of money for being a Facebook specialist, I'm like, that's marketing. And so again, props to the people that made money from that, but it was crazy. And now it's just rolled into social media, is rolled into marketing where it belongs. Like when you sit there and say, there's like, why do we still have historically Black schools? Why do we still need to have a clear D&I? Because it should be under HR, but HR people are not qualified yet to be able to like handle all groups. I love that you are like, I'm not that, but I complement that.
Right.
So I complement that in a where I make your organization and your offering a lot bigger, a lot stronger for your employees, because there are a lot of places where employees leave. I mean, and mind you, I grew up in a house where like you get a job, you work your ass off, you show who you are, you don't leave for any reason whatsoever. But there are a lot of individuals who are like, I will not stay here because I don't see people that look like me. But to have a company that really invests in their humans is huge. It's huge. And I love that they're partnering with you to make it grow. Do you grow outside of Boston? I mean, because there's I mean, you can go to Tulsa, you can go to California. There are pockets all over the country that need you, because Boston has a reputation, as everyone knows, it's not going away anytime soon. It's just like where like in Las Vegas, they're trying to get rid of the what happens here stays here. They're like, we're going to remarket. I'm like, you can't remarket that. I mean, good luck on that one. Because that is your biggest marketing tool. For Boston, like, I mean, like I go, when you have Saturday Night Live, Che.
Oh yeah,
Michael. Michael sells tickets. I mean, like Michael will sit there and say something on Saturday Night Live, and I know within 2 weeks he's coming into Boston. Yeah. Guaranteed. It's a marketing tool he uses. Great. When you're looking at Grey's Anatomy, and I go, Ellen Pompeii's from Everett, Mass, and I go, it's part of the script. And Shonda Rhimes went to school at Dartmouth. It's part of the script. How Boston is racist. So you have these constant comments that are always there, but also it's real. It's real. But other locations have the same exact problem. How do you grow, or will you grow outside of here?
Yeah, definitely. For one, the night before Boston While Black launched, so July 26th, I all of a sudden was like, what if somebody tries to do this somewhere else? So I own like 70 cities. Yes. Including London While Black. I was like, maybe one day this will be somewhere else. So I've always been thinking in that way, even though I wasn't even sure, but I was like, let me just hold on to these just in case. You know, people reach out from other places, even our big events like our summit and our family reunion, people have started to come from other places. But this semester actually, so I don't know when this will air, but it's January 2023. So we are one of the featured businesses for a Harvard Business School class. They're helping us to create our scaling strategy.
Oh, perfect. I love it.
So yeah,
great way to get that Harvard to get that. Yes, get that Harvard to help you grow. Yes.
So X City While Black coming to a city near you. And so what we're trying to decide is like, what's the scalable part? Because a lot of Boston While Black obviously is me in my relationship here. So like, what pieces can we scale? What does it look like? You know, I'm very sensitive to authentically showing up in another city. I don't want to tell the people in Tulsa, like, this is what you should be doing, you know. So who do we partner with in another city? How do we build a team in another city? So the hope is by 2024 to start to expand.
How does the company grow without you? Because you cannot be everywhere. You are the leading force. People come because of you, but at the same time, that's a lot of you.
Yeah. Operations. So, you know, I'm starting to build out our team, and soon to get a really strong number 2, because we need to, you know, everything we do needs to be like a repeatable process that, like, yes, there will be a role that I play around speaking on, you know, spreading the gospel, but it's really, you know, how does the back end work? And it's funny, Jody, because we partner with a lot of corporations. And I've had like huge corporations in Boston tell me, business wise, because I'll share with them what we're doing, that we're further along than them. And I'm talking about like multi-million, billion-dollar, but they don't have operations in place.
Yeah.
People just flying by the seat of their pants. It's like sales.
It's always been that way. Sales, I mean, sales has always been a driving force for a lot of things because it leads to money.
Right. Which I understand. And I've even gotten advice from advisors like, you shouldn't be like my first hire was an executive assistant. And one of my advisors was like, that's an interesting first hire. I'm like, look, I've built things before. I've seen things not be sustainable. I've seen initiatives. That initiative that I came back to Boston to run was a $6 million initiative through Department of Ed. It's gone now. Like I was like, I don't want to just build stuff that's not going to last. So, that's a big, Sheena is going to build many more things. There's going to be other cities. There's going to be a tourism aspect. There's going to be a recruitment aspect. There's going to be merchandise. Like there's going to be other things that grow out of Wild Black, the bigger entity.
Wait, you said education, right? Did I not hear that education aspect?
Well,
you're an educator.
Here's the thing. A conversation for another time, particularly on the university side. I came here as a grad student. So my actually initial pitch was in the universities and connecting. It's very hard. I went to corporations because it was just easier to move it forward, easier to pitch. Universities is tough. But no, I see like Wild Black chapters on campuses and so, I call it to my team, like a cultural empire that I'm trying to build. And I want to be the chairman and have CEOs of our different businesses that come out of the business. So I'm always thinking about that little taste of Ghana I had. The way that I frame it is I want to go be able to live in Ghana for 6 months and the company still runs and it's not dependent on me. So that is, we're not near that yet, but that is the plan of like, just how can I build something that, yes, I'm powering it in some ways, but structurally it does not rely on me doing every widget and making every decision.
Yep.
And so that is definitely part of the plan. I was going to say I'm old. I'm not old.
You're not old. I'm older than you. You know that. I'm older than you.
But I'm going to be 40 this year. And, God bless my parents for what they did and provided, but I want to retire a lot earlier than they did. Like, I cannot fathom working for another 30 years. Now, I'm a busybody and I like to create. I'm always going to be doing something, but I'm talking about having to do something every single day. I don't see another couple of decades of that.
No, I'm with you. I'm with you on that. I'm behind a little bit, but there's a reason why. And again, this is going to be a conversation offline, but I'm with you on that one.
You want control of your time. That's for
exactly.
me. Like,
no, absolutely. Where does this go? I mean, look, you want to scale the company. You have your hands in everything. Where do you see the future? I mean, of the United States. I mean, this is like a big old meaty, holy crap question, because I leave the country a lot because I need a break.
Yeah, I get it.
I'm very lucky that I have relatives all over the world. I can peace out at any time. I love coming home. I appreciate being home. I love that my career was based here. I mean, I'm first generation born here, conceived. I mean, my mom was 8.5 months pregnant, coming to America because she wanted the American dream with my dad and stuff like that. So I get here, but I love leaving to appreciate here a lot.
Yeah.
So for individuals that can't leave, or don't want to leave, or you don't even understand the concept of, oh my God, a plane ticket's not that expensive if I stop going to Starbucks. So what do you see the future for the next 20, 30 years? That generation of the next 20, 30 years of how do we enjoy living in the United States, growing in the United States, and achieving our own personal American dream when we have Melon?
Yeah. Here's what the pandemic highlighted for me, and both the public health side of it and just how that, for me, being a Black American or from the diaspora, you already have some sense of like, there's a little BS with America, right? Like you already know that because you experience it. But you're still from here. Like you still have, like, again, I talked about going to Ghana. It made me realize how much of a little American elitism I do have that just has been ingrained in me. Because how could it not? I grew up here. But the pandemic uncovered like, yo, we for real, like we're kind of like balancing on a shoestring. Like our foundation is not really as tight as we act like it is. And a little weather could like put our whole country in disarray.
And we're seeing it every day. Every day you turn on the TV, every day you open up a paper, every day you turn on the radio, you're like, oof.
Yeah.
I can't believe that's happening.
Right. So I think that you and I and others in this time are living in a transition period for this country. And everything's on the table right now. Politics, romantic relationship, like everything is getting turned upside down.
Upside down.
Future of work. Like, what does work mean now? Right? Like, what is it? My younger staff, they're not really growing up with like coworkers in a sense. They have coworkers, but they like office politics, like the stuff that you just kind of like are used to.
Talking on a show about by the water cooler, or like just like
right.
let's go out for some drinks. All those
right.
things that like really form you as a person.
Yep.
Even hearing your own voice. How do I sit there and debate when no one wants to talk? I'm like, oh, I'm offended. I'm like, but you have to hear your own voice, challenging, being challenged, and what comes out of that.
Yeah. So it is painful. I think, you know, there's pieces of it I wish I came like after this time once all this stuff was decided. But I do think that we are living in a transition time that I think as an entrepreneur in particular, you have to have a little bit of delusion and just be future oriented. So I really am hopeful. I don't know how much of it we will get to experience of kind of what comes out on the other side of it. But I do believe that there's so much this country is grappling with about who it is and, you know, the truth of who it is versus like who it wants to be or says it wants to be, that I think is being decided right now, probably like over the next decade or so is being decided. I think in the meantime, I like, for me personally, I am very focused on both doing the hard work that I'm doing and moving forward and enjoying life. Like almost to an extent where like I kind of feel kid-like. Like I'm so focused on fun and how to just let loose and be fun and enjoy myself, because there's this organization called Girl Trek. It's a Black woman ran, and it's about walking and getting out. During the pandemic, at the height of it, they had this number you could call every day at 12, and it would tell you about another a woman in Black history, a lot of the unknown women, and it was amazing. But a theme that went through it: died at 31, died at 42, died at 28, and I was like, I'm not sacrificing my life for this. Like,
no, but the thing is, they died at the time. At the time, people, I mean, like literally, I mean, think about it. When we were younger, people looked old. Number one,
right?
They go, I'm 54 to be. I mean, April, I turned 54. 54-year-olds did not look like me.
Right.
So they died younger. So is it because of the time?
They died somewhat, because like I just said, my father also was of that time, but he died at 80. Like, yes, it has to do with people having shorter lifespans, but they also were at the stress, like the work that they were doing and the positions they were putting themselves in contributed to it. And so I just am mindful about, I'm just not going to, I'm very like, I'm at the doctor's, any little thing, like I go personal training every week. I get massages. Like I really am
take care of you.
Yeah. Because how can I build something from a place of, I don't want to say how can I don't want to build something from a place of desperation, from a place of being unhealthy. Does that sometimes mean I missed out on things? Did I go to 3 events this week instead of 6? Yeah. But I'd rather sit and talk to my nieces who I haven't talked to in a while. who in the long run, that's going to matter more. And so I just,
and they'll remember that more. Remember the time that Auntie Sheena took the time for me.
Yeah. And so I'm just, so in all the turmoil of this country, I carve out my space of joy. And I think that it permeates. I think lately I noticed like my skin was really clear and glowing. It is because internally I'm just happy. I'm just content with myself. And I think a little bit of that is age. I think you just get more comfortable with yourself. Hopefully, you get more comfortable with yourself.
Just so you know, you do, because let's see, like, other than the fact that I went to an event last year, at the end of last year, that you saw me in, before that, when did you see me? Like, people see me in pockets, but if I have to like pick between going and taking a walk in the woods, I'm taking a walk in the woods versus walking into the city. There's definitely a place where I'd rather be, and people I'd rather be with. Then I don't need to be seen at every single party or every single event.
Focus more on your who really adds to your life. Now, there's, for both of us, a certain level of, I got to network and I got to be seen here and do this sometimes. But if you really, people will say to me like, oh, it seems like you're everywhere. And I think, social media you can craft it in a certain way.
100%.
Who I really spend my time with is a very small number of people. And like who I really let get close to me, because I have to protect my energy. And a lot of people they just want to take from you. So I think that I love traveling as well. And I really do love, I think because I just grew up a neighborhood person. Like I like how some people say, I get tired of seeing the same people. I love it. I love like, oh, we're a community of people. And I know I'm gonna see this person at the grocery store or this person. I love that feeling and sense of community and familiarity. And I like new experiences and to kind of travel with people or by myself. And so I think that we just have to get more focused on, that the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, they talk about your circle of influence. Like that's what I focus on. What can I actually influence? The other stuff, I can't do nothing about Joe Biden's or Trump's documents in their house. I could learn about it.
If I hear one more thing about that thing, it's just driving me crazy. Like, you know what?
But I just can't get myself.
In the office, you sit there and give everything back. Just
right. I can't get myself worked up about it. I have no control over it. So I manage my energy in that way. I'm not saying things don't upset me and I don't get passionate about stuff, but I manage the stuff that I can, like, I can scream and nothing's going to happen. So I'm just going to save my energy for the things that I can have an impact on.
I say to people, I have 3 things that like every single situation, I'll just say what it is. It is simple as can be. I'm old school because I was in the media. I'm nonpartisan. I don't care left or right. I don't care. I'm just like, here it is. And I'll tell you the truth. Those jeans don't look good on you. I will tell you. But when it comes to 3 things, elderly, children, and animals, I will rip you apart. Those are the only times that you will see me lose my mind over, because those are my things. I was an educator. I took care of my grandmother till she was 95 years old. And when she died, animals, if I could sit there and be with every animal in the world, I watched literally every animal show because I'm like, oh my God, look at them. It's just like, I go nuts over animal shows. Zoo things, I was anti-zoo until I started seeing the back end of the zoo. I'm like, those people are like good people. Those are God's people taking care of those animals that are sick. Oh my God. So but other than that, I tell people, I don't care, but I care, because I watch people lose their minds. I'm like, God, you're such an educated person and you're losing your mind over something like this.
Are you arguing with strangers online? Like there's so many other things you could be putting your energy into. And I am all about, there's this woman called Toni Jones. You should actually listen to her. She's it's kind of like spoken word / rap, but it's motivational. And she has a song called Energy Budget. And that's that's what I really focus on. Like, is this going to be worth? Because once I'm mad, it's a wrap for whoever's around. So I don't like to go to that place unless, like, I save that for the once a year when I really need to get like that. And outside of that, I'm like, I don't have any control over that. Again, I'm like you. Not that I don't care, but what can I realistically do? Now, there are some things that are national or city issues that I can lend my voice to. I write op-eds and I do, where I feel like I can at least influence other people. But even with that, I'm very careful because I'm mindful of what people try to attribute to me. Sheena said, so you don't hear me say something about a lot of things.
Yeah.
Because unless I think I can like intelligently contribute, that's what my group chat is for. That's where I say ignorant stuff. I don't do.
I have my cousin every Sunday for 3 hours. We sit there and talk every Sunday from 3 to 6. And I'm like, oh, if people heard half the things I said, I'm like, oh, I feel like I use you as a founding board before I put it out to the world. And he's like,
you have to have those spaces.
Yeah.
I tell my staff that. I'm like, find your mentors, get you a good group chat. Like, you got to have places to get that out and people you can trust to, if somebody saw some of my text, they probably like, Sheena.
No. Same thing with me.
Yeah, but I'm just getting it.
All right, I have taken way too much of your time, but I don't care because I'm like, I don't care because it's okay. The education. We have so many things in common. Our dads, they both rest in peace. The education component, we are sponges. The building the communities, we will do it till the cows come home. The essence of being high energy, low energy, but literally enjoying our time. One of the things that I do, which you should definitely adopt if you don't, I literally get in my car sometimes and just drive. And I'm like, my mom's like, where are you going to go? She's like, left. She's like, what do you mean? I go, I just drive and I just keep going left. Sometimes I end up in Western Mass. Sometimes I end up in New Hampshire. Sometimes I just end up somewhere, but I just drive because I end up in a coffee shop and I just like enjoy my time. So
I like that. So I like to listen to music. I like music in the car. Like it sounds different.
It does. That podcast, whatever it is, but who I spend the time with the most is my car. I love my car. I love my time in my car. It's away from everyone. It's beautiful. But this is not going to be the last time I talk to you because this is the first interview of the new year. I literally have stockpiled tons of interviews that will start going out. But I mean, I really, really enjoy the time with the people that I respect so much. I don't need to see you. I don't need to talk to you. I don't need to hang out with you, but I respect you. I respect what you do. I respect where you come from. And also, we had a time where we were in our cubes together and we talked about your dad. We talked about your mom. We talked. I go, but it was like so nice to hear it all over again. I'm like, oh my God, it's like a book that it's like a good book. And I'm like, I get to read this book all over again. I go, this is nice. So I really appreciate the fact that you took literally, this is one of the longest 2-hour conversation just to hear about you, hear about everything that you're going through, but everything that you're doing and how you left so many gems in this conversation that if anyone does not learn from you just by hearing this, you didn't hear it. You need to go back and hear it. You need to listen to this again because you left so many amazing gems. So I do appreciate this in so many different ways.
Jody. I know your admiration doesn't come easily. So
everyone knows that if I like you forever. If I don't, it's clear. I'm you know what you see is what you get with me. There's no shocker with me at all. Like, I mean, oh, she doesn't like you. Oh, I get that. She likes you. It really isn't. For every man that's ever met me, they're like, I go, how'd you meet Jody? She insulted me first. I'm pretty good. This is it. All right. So every interview I end it the same exact way. So no matter how many times we talk, I will always end it the same way. So if you had a personal ask and if you had a professional ask, because we ask for our businesses, but we never ask for ourselves, what would be your personal ask and what would be your professional ask of anyone that is listening to you right now?
On the professional side, I would say, I'm sure you have all different kinds of listeners, but I think one of the things that in whatever way people can contribute to this, I clearly have this love of Black people and Black culture and experiences. I'm finding that we have these heightened times when everyone cares and then it wanes. And I already see that happening even on the financial side. I see how people's sentiments change. So I would just ask that, learn more about Boston While Black and other things going on around the country and really try to understand how important it is for everyone, and in this case, particularly Black people, to have a sense of belonging in this country, and how if you have the resources in particular or the influence, let Black people lead, like resource us to do the work that we need to do to, continue to move our communities forward. So I would ask that on the professional side. Personally, Mm-hmm. That's a good question.
People always get stuck on the personal one because, again, we ask for our businesses, but we never ask for ourselves. This is why I put this question out there.
And it's also hard because you don't necessarily know who you're talking to. But I would say, give me grace. Like, I think that I'm very blessed that a lot of people reach out to me and people show me love all the time. And sometimes that comes with like a lot of expectation, and people, as I was saying in the beginning, take a lot of things personally. And I love myself. I think I'm dope and I'm doing all these things, but I'm learning and I'm continuing to learn. And so I ask for people's grace around respecting my time and space. And if you really, and I'm very coachable and a learner. So if you have information, resources, or just want to give you're doing a great job, like I'm very receptive to that. But giving just grace around, it's a huge learning curve. I went to school for education, and while I think I am still educating in many ways, I'm new as a businesswoman. And so yeah, I would say that. And just as I won't say that because that's back to business.
What were you gonna? No, say it. What were you gonna say? What were you gonna say? Say it.
Oh, they're so intertwined. I was just gonna say.
I'll let you have it. Go ahead, say it.
All right. I just was gonna say, as you continue to see us grow, know that like a big thing for small businesses is capital and like great talent. And so I'm always looking for great talent, even when we're not actively hiring. I just like to meet people that can contribute to our mission. So I'm always open to introductions to people that now or in the future can be a part of building what we're building. And you can send me dates my way. That's a personal ask.
Oh, wait, so I was confused. You're not with someone, or you are with someone? Date?
No, I'm not. No.
Okay. This beautiful woman is single. All right. Wait, both of us are single, but still. All right. Like, come on. Where are these men? Where are these amazing men out there? So yes, yeah, I will send dates. You are not the first person that asked for that, by the way.
Yes.
Of the 220 people I've interviewed, you are not the first one. So we need to sit there and like step up. If you like someone, if you find someone attractive, if you find someone that's stimulating, approach them. Do not be afraid. Do not go on an app. Walk up to the person and approach them and just say, hi, my name is XYZ. It's not going to kill you.
There's definitely an intimidation factor that happens.
You know what? Men get rejected every single day. I go, I get it. I totally understand. I go, and when you're dealing with powerhouse women, they're like, I don't want to go there. But someone has to have some balls and just get up there. Jeez. I'm going to say it. God, just step up and just go up to the woman and say, my name is XYZ. I go, I find you attractive. I would like to just be kind. Don't be like stupid. Don't sit there and say some ridiculous line. Just man up.
2023.
2023. I'm gonna get the t-shirt. I'll send you one. My love, thank you so very much. I mean, I will say it like I started this way. I've kept on. I'm telling you, I adore you. I adore you. I respect you. You're doing amazing, amazing work. I'm happy you didn't go back to New York. I'm happy you stayed. I go, you can travel to New York all the time. I do all the time. I go to New York. Literally, I will drive up to New York, get Haitian food, and drive right back same day because that's what I do. But I'm happy you are here. You are literally building something so needed, and it's going to continue to grow. And you're not just going to go to Ghana. You're going to go to other parts of Africa too.
Oh yes, that's the plan for this December. So,
okay. All right, good.
Thank you.
Love. Have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful weekend.
All
right.
Bye.
Bye.
We actually have a digital community. So we have an app and a platform where people are connecting all day, every day.
Chris Turner became a member this weekend because of the networking opportunity.
When you need to get something done within one of those networks, it's really nice to be in a place like this and to have access to those networks.
This is about celebrating Black culture and community in Boston.
One woman's vision coming to life and bringing an entire community together.